Hello, Cami, and welcome to the Dandelion podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and seeing this all come true.
Yeah, exactly. It's all coming together. Um, so me and Cami, how we know each other. Well, actually, if you're watching this on the video version, you might recognize Cami because she's done quite a few reels for us. And we have a habit of wearing the same clothes, which we've managed to avoid today, which is great.
It is great.
Um, so Cami is the first person I took on as a freelancer for Dandelion Social. So Cami's actually the social media content and marketing executive. Um, so we met was it 7 months ago or 6 months, something like that. And yeah, it was kind of crazy because we obviously I needed someone to help with social content creation, things like that. But I didn't expect to basically find a really good friend as well. And it's
Mm.
really weird. I don't know if you felt like this.
Yes.
But I honestly was like, I haven't really ever connected with someone that quickly and on like a similar level for like a long, long time. Um, and yeah, so then this is also like a blessing and a curse because it means that we have this amazing friendship and connection, but we also have to work together. So we have to remind ourselves to basically talk about work, which I find very difficult. But anyway, Cami
Yes.
is an amazing, very interesting person. And so we're not actually going to be talking about social media today. We're actually talking about something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about soul connection, um, because, well, I'll let Cami, you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about you, your background, your hobbies. Go for it.
Oh, thank you so much for that little intro. It makes me so happy that you feel this way, honestly, because I feel the exact same. And we always talk about that. And yeah, I remember the first time that we talked in our quote unquote like little interview, you interviewing me. And I told you all about my spiritual hobbies and things like that. And I think it was one of the things that caught your attention, like not the most, but because I obviously have an expertise that would help you and everything. But it was one of the things that I remember you telling me that it really caught your attention. And I feel like that really showcases this soul connection things, because I think that a lot of the times we are like going about in our lives and things like that, and there's like a specific thing on people that really entices us, and I think that it is our souls kind of reconnecting to our soul friends around the world, which sounds a little bit woo woo, but this episode will be woo woo. So I think it's
Yeah, I was
like
going to say.
it's the beginning of I'm setting the stage for the rest of the episode. So yeah, but yeah, no, I'm really really happy with our connection, and I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much for having me. And yeah, talking a little bit about myself. So I'm actually from Brazil. So my English, I just want to let everyone know that I'm not an English native person. So yes, you'll hear an accent and you'll hear maybe some things that are not 100% correct. And yeah, I'm from Brazil. I am a freelance, a social media, and also content strategist freelance. And I left Brazil actually 1 year ago, and that's what I call my jumping off of a cliff, because I just bought a one-way plane ticket to Portugal. I really didn't know where I was going to live, how I was going to make money, anything of that. But I was just following this calling from my intuition, from my soul, from my heart. And I just knew that if I trusted that instinct, that everything was going to be okay, and that I just needed to do that for myself and my soul. And so I did. And it was really, really scary because it was the most uncertain thing that I've ever done in my life. I literally left everything. I even left a relationship that I had as well. And yeah, left the comfort of my home and everything like that, and just jumped into the discomfort. And yeah, it was really challenging. And I actually met you in a moment that I felt like, so I had this vision in my mind, right? Like when I actually left, when I bought the plane ticket, it was as if I like had jumped off of a cliff, like literally. And as the months passed by, I felt like I was getting closer and closer to the ground. And I was like, where is the unicorn that is actually going to like pass by and swoop me off of the ground, and not let me fall and hit the ground? And the moment that I met you was actually the moment that I saw the ground like really coming really close, because I was like, okay, I don't know, like what am I gonna do, how am I gonna work and everything. And then you showed up, and then a lot of other things started unfolding. And yeah, another like other jobs and other clients also showed up. But yeah, you can say that you were a little part of that unicorn moment, because at some point I was like crying in my bathtub with anxiety, being like, okay, I don't know what's gonna go on next week. How am I gonna pay my bills? So it was very frightening, but at the same time, I grew a lot from it. And yeah, my whole thing for this past years has been learning to connect to your soul, learning to connect to your intuition, because I believe that from that space is where you actually create a life that is aligned to your deeper and most authentic self instead of your egoic self. So yes, I talked a lot about weird things, and hopefully you understood a little bit about me.
Yeah, well, you know that I love anything weird or out there, and like I'm taking from that I'm a unicorn, so I'm just gonna go with that.
Okay, that sounds good.
No, but that's a really, really interesting story, and not one that many people will be able to, I mean this in a good way, but not one that many people will be able to relate to, because a lot of us are very stuck, and we feel that we need to be, we have to have those layers of security. We can't just, the idea of just booking a one-way ticket somewhere is so out of the realm of like comfort zone and just realm of possibility. So the fact that you did that and it's all come together just kind of proves the whole point of connecting with your soul and aligning with your purpose. And I just think that's such a fascinating thing. So we need to find out more. So moving on just slightly. So what does connection and disconnection mean to you?
Really love that question. And it's quite a deep one. So I'll just connect to my intuition to answer you that. I think for some reason I feel like the idea of disconnection, like starting with the idea of disconnection, for some reason sounds like it will tie up to how I see connection eventually. So I'll just start by the way that I see disconnection personally. I feel like when you are disconnected from your soul and your authentic self, I feel like you end up being disconnected from the world and from your true purpose in life. I feel like the way that I see connection and disconnection is actually very spiritual. I don't know if everyone sees it that way. Maybe it's because I have like a very spiritual lenses in the way that I see the world, and I end up seeing everything in kind of like a spiritual way. um but I feel like everything for me goes back to the idea of, are you connected to your soul? Are you connected to your heart? Or are you connected to your mind and your ego? Which is not a bad thing, and we can talk about that later. But what I mean is, are you connected to your authentic self, to your authentic and really the way that your soul came on earth to be and live? or are you disconnected from that, and are you acting from your ego and from your mind because you need external validation, or because you are acting like through your self-sabotaging kind of like mechanisms and things like that. So for me, I think it's a lot about authenticity and also about awareness. So are you acting through awareness? And I feel like once you are acting through awareness and self-awareness, you are more prone to to being connected to the things that are actually in alignment with your soul. And I feel like when you are acting from that space, you are going to connect with people, with opportunities, with I don't know, information, books, podcasts, whatever that is actually in alignment. Because I feel like even if you are connecting, for example, when we are in an egoic and mental, very mental space, you are still connected to people and everything like that, but are they actually in alignment with your soul? So I feel like even when you are connected in this space, you are disconnected from your authenticity. And for me, that means that you're not in an aligned connection, quote unquote. And that's a very specific way of seeing things. But yeah, for me, like, disconnection means you are disconnected from your authentic self. You are living through a space that is not in alignment with your soul. And then connection means that you are living from this authentic self, from this authentic space, from this aligned space, your soul and to your heart. And whatever happens from that space is the most connected thing that you can receive, the most connected that you can be, like, with the universe, and yeah, with your purpose as well. So that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I love that. That's so interesting. And I think, one of the reasons why I started this podcast is that that question is going to mean so many different things to different people, like depending on what their expertise is, or the world that they live in. That's going to be such a different answer depending on who you talk to. And that's why I love it. So I really found that really interesting. So on that, do you think we're becoming more or less connected as a society?
That's a very interesting question, especially with what I just said, because I feel like, as I mentioned previously, you can be connected, but without connection. I'll just say, like, you can be connected without being in in an aligned connection, which for me is the true connection, quote unquote. So that's really challenging to say, because I feel like as the world progresses, we tend to think that yes, we are becoming more connected, especially like through social media, for example. Like, that's the first thing that my mind goes to. We are connected all the time with, like, WhatsApp, Instagram. We know what everyone is doing. If something happens, like, in the other side of the world, I will know it in like 10 minutes or even less. And yeah, like, it's really interesting, because when I think about, I don't know, like, when my grandparents were younger. Oh, by the way, I've never told you that, like, when my grandparents were younger, they had just gotten engaged, or they had just gotten, like, in a relationship, and they were living in Egypt. So my grandparents were born in Egypt. And my grandmother, she did a hunger strike because she wanted to go study in the US. And no one was letting her, because she was a woman and she couldn't travel by herself and things like that. But then she did a hunger strike. They eventually let her go and study, and they were exchanging letters for 1 year from, like, Egypt to the US, and they turned all of these letters into a book. So I have that book in my computer, and some letters are in French and some are in English, because they talked in, like, French and English. And it's really interesting to see, like, the dates, because I was reading it, like, the other day. So I have the dates from them and everything. And, like, they so they sent one, and they wrote about something. And then while the letter was arriving to Egypt, my grandfather was writing about something else. And so my grandmother would receive the response to her letter, like only what, like 2 months, 3 months later? Who knows? Who knows? Um, so it took a long time for them to to communicate between them, and the conversations that they had to be way more specific in each letter, so they actually and go way more in depth. We send like one sentence now because we are going to receive a response in instantaneously. So when you think about, of course, like some years ago versus now, of course we're more connected in the sense that everything is more instantaneous. However, it's interesting to think about like the depth of connection, especially when you talk about soul connection, like aligned connection. Like, are we more connected now because we have more points of contact and because it's it's like quicker, or no? What is really like the aligned connection? Is it the more in-depth letters that they sent and everything, or is it now? So it's really interesting to think about that in the sense of what's quicker or not. However, I do think that in regards to a more spiritual approach to seeing things, which is the way that I explained connection previously, I believe that I really don't know. Because like I can think of, yes, we are going to a more spiritual place. I feel like people are connecting more to their purposes. People are trying to understand themselves more. We are more self-aware than we were some years ago. Like my parents didn't go to therapy. Nowadays therapy is kind of like default, it's the norm. We talk about it. We talk about traumas. We talk about inner child and things like that. So I feel like we are more connected to our inner selves. So I do believe that in a spiritual sense, we are starting to become more connected to our purpose and to ideas that are maybe more not so common, but they are more in alignment with our souls. However, I can also see um, a lot of disconnection in the world in the sense of egoic and mental actions. People just, wanting to make a lot of money, which there's no problem at all with it. It just depends on on where you're coming from. Just people like wanting a lot of power and yeah, just coming from a mental place. And of course, like when I say that, I think a lot about the government and institutions like that. um
Mm.
so yeah, I think it's I wouldn't say I have an answer, but I think it's a lot of you know interesting questions and inner inquiries. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, that story about your grandma and your granddad, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God. I mean, that just puts dating nowadays to shame.
I know.
I remember when I was dating and I couldn't even get a text back, and they're like messaging, sending love letters across the world. That's just so cute. That's so cute.
Yeah,
That's so nice. Um, yeah, and then I think I agree with you in terms of well, I know there's no answer to the question, which is why it's kind of in the podcast, but yeah, it's good to get your perspective on it, and particularly like the seeing it as disconnected when you're more in your ego, and then connected when you're more aligned with your soul. So we just going to put you on the spot for a second. How would you define like the ego or being in the egoic state, just so that listeners, if they haven't come across that term, they can understand and like keep up with what you're saying?
yeah, that's a great question, and it's important for us to talk about that for a little bit. So, I first want to state that this is after studies, like years of studying in spirituality. That's how I see both of these aspects of ourselves. It doesn't mean that it's correct or not. So, yeah, take what you want from it, and then leave what you don't want from it, basically. So the way that I see ego, first of all, I just want to say that I don't believe in the death of the ego. I don't believe that we should kill the ego or something like that, because the ego is necessary for us to live in the world. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to cross the streets. You wouldn't be able to look at the time and be on time for your plane or something like that. So I just want to state that for me, I don't believe in the death of the ego. I think the ego is very important. What I believe in is an aligned ego, and that's where the intuition comes into play. So for me, when you are living from a mental place, from an egoic place, I can give an example of my own actually. So when I had just graduated from college, and I remember I was doing like one of those visualizations, like dream maps, like visualization boards or something like that. And it's so funny to remember like my own dreams when I was 22. So that was 6 7 years ago. I was writing things like I want to be CEO, like VP of Google, like CEO of a fashion magazine and things like that. And I was writing all of these things and everything like that. And I remember like 6 months later, I started actually working on spirituality and self-awareness and things like that. And I re-looked at that visualization board, and I saw that all of the things that I had written down were actually dreams that my dad had for me. So they were basically things that I wanted to become and to do so I could receive a validation from my dad. So he would be happy with me. So society would be happy with me. So society would approve of me, or things like that. So basically, so when I say like, are you living from the way I say mind self versus soul self. So when I say, are you living from your mind versus like quote unquote from your mind self, is, are you living from this need of external validation? Are you living from what society is expecting from you? Are you living from all of those basically external expectations? Are you living from a repressed state, like you really want to do something else but you are like stuck in a 9 to 5 because you're afraid? So if you're living from fear, from anxiety, from any of the disqualified energies, quote unquote, you are living from ego. Versus when you live from intuition, you are living from an expansive state. You're living from an abundant space, a state, from trust, from surrender. You are living from alignment, and you are doing things because they bring you joy, rather than a validation of some sorts. And I also
Mhm.
want to say that it's not like you are one day you shift to soul and then you're forever in soul. We have a lot of different areas and aspects of our lives, and sometimes and some days it's really easy to navigate life through soul, and some days it's harder, and then you shift back into ego. So it's like a continuous dance between going to your mind and then going to your soul. And every time you are in your mind, it's also having that awareness so you can expand and then jump back to soul. So yeah, basically summarizing, when you're living through fear and through need for external validation and anxiety, you're living through the ego. That's what I was doing when I visualized my life in when I was 22 years old. And nowadays what I did were things that my parents really weren't that happy with. When I was like, okay, I'm going to Portugal and I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, goodbye, like with no insurance, no security. But I knew it wasn't easy. So when I say like so, it's really fun and joyful. I mean, it's not easy, but I knew from my heart it was what my soul was calling me to do. And so that is like, I felt expensive, I felt like I was free, like I was, fulfilling something that was really, really big inside of me. So mind self versus soul self. Yeah.
Mm. I think that's one of the best ways I've heard it explained, because I feel I've read so many books and it's talks a lot about, a lot of people talk about ego and Now I get very caught up in different definitions of it, but I think the way that you're describing it really makes a lot of sense to me. Um, so going off what you just said, what does connecting to your soul and being like aligned with your purpose mean to you?
I feel like it's a daily thing. It's not something that you do once and then forever you're connected to your soul. I feel like it's a relationship, and every relationship needs work and needs nurture and needs time and effort and love, a lot of love as well, and trust. And that's the same as building a connection to your soul, a connection to your intuition. I feel like the more that you trust it, the more it will show up to you, not because it hates you or something like that, but just because you start opening up your channel of communication with it. And so it takes time for you to also understand how it communicates to you. So my intuition, my soul communicates to me through emotions and sensations, and also visually. There are people who hear a lot of things. There are people that just know, there's so many ways. There are people who receive like align numbers, or see, for example, butterflies or specific symbols that communicate things to them. So there are so many ways to connect to your soul. And I feel like it takes time and it takes patience and love for you to understand how to do that and to develop your own way of doing it. So yeah, I feel like nowadays I feel like super close to it. And of course, there are times in which I feel more disconnected from it, but I know that it's always there. So I know that it hasn't left me. It's there just waiting for me to come back. And it's like, I don't know, if you think of like a bear, like a mama bear and a baby bear. I don't know if that's a true thing, but like the baby bear like goes out and kind of like explores the world. And the mama bear is always there, back there waiting for you to come back. So I feel like it's a very welcoming and nurturing energy, that is allowing of whatever you want to do. You want to go and stay disconnected from it for 2 years, it will still be there when you come back.
Mm,
So yeah.
that's a really nice explanation of that. And something I can totally relate to at the moment, because as we've spoken about lots of times, I've gone through like quite a spiritual awakening. I hate to say that because it sounds really embarrassing. But yeah, I've done a lot of work on myself. I've evolved quite a bit over the recent years, and I'm very much so much more in tune with my intuition and I feel more aligned recently. And some of the things that you're mentioning, like angel numbers, like 1111, and like I'll see little signs and things like that. And yeah, it's really comforting, and it's really nice. Like I think I said to you recently, I was very worried about my dad, who's had a lot of ill health.
Hmm.
And I did a meditation, and I also have oracle cards, so everyone's going to find out that I'm very I'm a hippie. Anyway, so I was doing these oracle cards, and I was like, okay, what can you support me and my family, because this is a really difficult time, I don't know what's going on. So I was sort of meditating on that, and then I basically was sort of saying, just show me that I'm not on my own, and we're not on our own in this. And this jay bird came, and like I told you this, it came onto my balcony, and we never get any birds on our balcony. But it was so beautiful. I've never seen a jay before, and it was popping along and like looking through the window at me and like tweeting at me. And it was so amazing. So I was like, okay, first of all, I've never seen a jay bird in my life, and second of all, we never get birds on our balcony. And interestingly, I haven't told you this bit, because I had a very difficult weekend with my dad being ill again, and I was quite upset yesterday, and I didn't do any meditation on it, but it was just like really upsetting. And I sat down at my desk, and that jay appeared on my balcony again
Oh
yesterday.
wow, I
And
love
like I'm
that.
telling you, we don't get any birds on here, like because we've got a building site just down next to our flats, and it's just very open and things like that. So, and the fact that it was the J again, like
Again,
anyone, you know, I mean, I think some people might be like, okay, sure, that's your like your spirit guides or your soul connection or whatever. And they probably wouldn't believe that, or, you know, but I think it's just, you have to just take what helps you in these situations. And if that's something that you feel helps guide you, then you just have to go with it and like be open to it. So
exactly.
I spoke a bit about the fact that I do meditation, and I know you do as well. And I just wondered if there's any, like, in practical terms, what people can do to find that connection with their intuition, their soul purpose.
For me, what I always try to look for is our sensations in the body. So the thing is that the more that you release your traumas, your fears, your anxieties, and things like that, which you can do through somatic release, which is like feeling through the body, like through the body, the more that you do that, the more you will create space for your intuition to come through and to come forth. So what I like to do personally, the way that I like to meditate is, for example, if I feel really triggered, if I feel like a really big anxiety or a big emotion in my body, the first thing that I do is normally I close my eyes and I try to find it and locate it in my body, and then breathe into it. So you can breathe through 5 and then exhale through your mouth through 5 as well, just like visualizing this ball of light, I don't know, like going through that space and exhaling through that space as if you are like releasing it from your body. And while you're doing that, maybe some memories will start coming up which are connected to that, and just allowing that all to show up and to feel all of your emotions. I'm a very like bodily person. I feel like everyone's a bodily person because everyone has a body, but I process things a lot through my body and I feel things a lot through my body. So for me, it's always easier to do it that way. And maybe, you know, the listeners could try that for themselves as well. And whenever I feel my intuition, I also feel it in my body, you know, but it's more of a sensation. So for me, after I do that type of meditation, like releasing the anxiety and things like that, like I'll get a feeling of warmth, and a feeling like a sensation of support. And either I'll hear it like you're well, like everything, all is well, and things like that, or I'll just feel it. And I know, like, that's what I talk a lot about, trust. Because if you want to connect with your intuition, maybe like weird things will happen, like, oh my god, I had this vision of a Buddha sitting on top of the world with a snake on it, and blah blah blah, and what is this, does this mean blah blah blah. Like, maybe I will receive that same image and it will mean something for me. And the thing is, your intuition is giving you that image because whatever that represents to you, that's what it needs to represent to you, you know. Like, they know the way that they need to communicate with you because they are you, you know, they are part of you. So there's a lot of trust in it. I remember, I don't know if I've ever told you that, but I used to do crystal reading for people. So people would sit in front of me, and a crystal is basically also a vessel that connects my higher self to your higher self. So it's like my higher self is receiving so it's like a telephone from your higher self to my higher self. And when I do crystal readings, I receive visual images from their higher selves. And sometimes it's like random stuff. Like, I remember I was doing this crystal reading once to a friend, and I saw like a rainbow, and then I saw like a orange tree, and I was like, this is so random. And when you are doing it, you're like, I almost don't want to say it because it's so stupid that I don't want to feel stupid. But one thing that I've learned throughout my spiritual path and talking to intuition and so is like, trust trust that. Like, trust whatever it is, even if you end up thinking that you're wrong in the end, maybe it had like a different meaning, and you'll get there like next time. And then I told her, like, okay, I'm seeing a rainbow and like this orange tree. And she got really emotional, and she was like, oh my god, my parents used to call me a rainbow when I was a kid, and there used to be like this huge orange tree in front of my house that used to be my favorite tree, and that I would go there for connection to my soul. I didn't
Mm.
know that. And can you imagine? And like, that wasn't anything that was like, oh my God, this is going to happen in your future. The rainbow with the orange, you're going to be an orange farmer or something like that. It wasn't that. But it was just her intuition showing her, I'm here. I know you. I've been with you since you were young. How am I going to know that? I won't,
Mm.
but her intuition knows it. And that's why it was showing me, to show her that that her highest self was there, that she was being supported. And can you imagine, like, if my ego had gotten in the way and I hadn't told her that, she wouldn't have felt the feeling that she felt. So I feel like it's a lot about trust. Like, trust has such a big impact on that. And I feel like when you are in whatever meditation that you're in, and you start receiving messages or visions or things like that, like, write them down. That also helps a lot. And then you start trusting it more. I like writing things down also, like rereading it and seeing like, oh, okay, this happened, or like, ah, this meant that, or something like that. And also, I would say a lot of connection with the body. Those are the things that help me the most, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I hope that anyone that's listening to this can give those things a go and actually just, yeah, let me know if they find that it helps, because I completely agree that they're the things that I tend to do as well. Although I'm really rubbish at writing things down. I need to get into I'm like, no, I'll remember that. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Um, so manifestation and law of attraction are massive talking points and buzzwords at the moment. Do you believe in them? And if so, explain what you think.
Oh, I live by it. Like, my
Mm.
entire, I feel like the life that I have now, which is a life that I dreamed of having when I was 23. So, fun fact, after I did the very mental visualization board, and then I was like, okay, this is actually my dad's dreams. I was like, okay, what are my dreams? And I did an actual board that was aligned to me. I actually wrote, I want to have a lot of freedom. I want to live wherever I want in the world. I want to be able to be a digital nomad. I want to be able to travel the world and have this flexibility, and have friends from all over the world and things like that. And that's actually the life that I have now. So I'm very, very, very grateful for my life. And I'm very grateful for my past self that took all of the actions and went through all of the scary decisions and made all of the scary decisions that she made. So I'm very grateful for her. And I'm 100% sure that I'm not here because I hustled my way into it, like worked really hard and things like that. If I did work hard, was really on my mindset and on releasing the beliefs that I couldn't get to where I wanted to go, which is here. So yes, I'm very big in manifestation. I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about it. Like, the way that I personally see manifestation nowadays is not in the like, think positive and you will attract blah blah blah, because I feel like there are many studies, especially when you talk about like quantum physics and neuroscience, that talk about manifestation as more connected to the subconscious rather than the conscious. So you can try to think your way into abundance all you want, but if in your subconscious mind you still have beliefs that you don't even know about, that you're not deserving of it, then nothing will happen because you don't believe it in a deeper level. There are things that are hinging you, like there are beliefs that are hinging you, and you don't even know, and you're not even aware of them. So when I started doing more of the subconscious work, like hypnotherapy, like really going very, very deep in your subconscious and recalling some traumas and triggers from the past and things like that. Not re-traumatizing yourself, like really doing it in an aligned way with like guidance from meditation or therapists and things like that. That's when I saw the biggest shifts in my life. And I think that the more you, as I mentioned previously, like the more you clear yourself from those not unaligned, misaligned beliefs, like the more that you clear yourself from your fears, your traumas, your triggers, and things like that, the closer you are to your soul. And when you are closer to your soul, you start manifesting and creating a life that is actually connected to your soul's purpose, your soul's to what your soul actually came here on earth to do. And I'm not talking only about jobs or careers. I'm talking about the way that your soul wants to live. So maybe like your ego wants you to live like in New York and having like a very busy life, but your soul actually craves living off in the land and working and having a very quiet life in a farm, you know? And that's not connected necessarily to job. It's just connected to the way your lifestyle, you know, your relationships, the way that you treat your body, your health, everything like that. So, yeah, I do believe in manifestation, and I really like the idea of manifesting in alignment with soul, because I think that you can still manifest a lot of things in alignment with ego, like as like power, money, blah blah blah, things like that. Um, but I think that that will not make you fulfilled. So I think that we are so powerful as human beings that we can create anything that we want. However, are you creating from a place that is aligned or not? Because if it's not, you will get it and then you want more and then more and then more and then more. And you'll never feel fulfilled, you'll never feel grateful, because you're not really manifesting what is in true alignment with your authentic self. And I feel like that's a big difference and a big thing that I don't know, I saw in my life as well, like manifesting some things and then being like, meh, that's really meh, not what I wanted, you know? And now manifesting through soul, being like, wow, I'm so grateful. Like I could die tomorrow and I wouldn't care, because I feel like I'm so grateful with my life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I struggle with manifestation myself, just because, you know, a lot of people that are about manifestation have come from a privileged background, and
Mm,
they've had a lot of privilege in their life, not just wealth, but say, you know, they're white, they're from a Western country, they're from, you know, all of these kind of things, they've had the education, etc. So when they're saying, you know, you can create your life and look where I am today, etc., sometimes I get a little bit, it annoys me, because I think, okay, but if you were born into like severe poverty, or you were born into like third world country, you've had no access to any of the means and privileges that someone of like them would find. So then I find that very difficult, because I just think, well, yeah, I'm sure that person would love to be in your position, but the external factors that were out of their control, if you don't go into the depth of kind of thinking like what their soul
mhm.
chose to go to, etc. But like, how would you kind of respond to that, I suppose?
Yeah, I think that in spiritual, I think that not only in manifestation, I feel like spirituality can have a lot of I think that there's a lot of spiritual bypassing things. So it's like, oh my God, this horrible thing happened to you. It's okay. Just like close your eyes and think like, I'm beautiful. Everything's going to be okay. Like, that's not how it works. You know, like I have this analogy. It's as if like you have a very dirty room and then you're like, okay, I'm just gonna put a pink couch over there and like this very pretty rug and everything's gonna be fine. Like it's still dirty, you know, like things are
Mm,
still underneath the carpet, kind of like you can't just plant a positive affirmation in a very misaligned brain, like a misaligned mind. So, and just think that everything will like magically disappear just because you're thinking positive or something like that. What I do believe in is that we have the power to, I'm 100% sure, in my opinion, we all have the power to create our own realities, independent of background or anything else. However, I do feel like the your ability or your privilege, quote unquote, to get information in regards or get access to therapy, books, podcasts, whatever it is, I feel like that really plays a huge part in you having the awareness that that's even possible. In saying that, though, when in the beginning of the year, I had a client. He actually was. Um, I don't remember from where in Africa, but he was in like human trafficking. Like he didn't go really that much into it, but he went to, like, he was a part of he was trafficked. I don't know. He was human trafficked. I don't know how to say that, but yeah,
Traffic. Yeah.
yeah, human trafficked, I don't know. And he was actually talking a lot about how he wanted to help other people that were in the same condition to understand that this is possible, because he felt like he wanted to bring that information, because he kind of, I don't know how he got that information. I think it was a little bit more like through religious backgrounds for him, or someone kind of like passed it on. But even when he was like still a little kid, he was like, this is not my story, this is not who I
Mm,
am, and things like that, almost as if his soul was already telling him that. And
mm,
he, up to this day, he's like, I don't want to be associated with that story. I don't want to, not in the sense that he's like deleting that story from his life. It's just like, this was like me, and now this is like the next version of me, so let's focus
mm,
on the next version of me. And he used to tell me like some of the things that he used to do, even when he had like nothing, and he already believed in having another life. And he came from like a very extreme place. So I do believe that, yeah, it's something that we all as humans have the power to do. And of course, it's not like, and I think that, but I do think that we have to be very cautious, especially when we are talking about spirituality, about spiritual bypassing, and also
mm,
about yeah, recognizing some information privilege, like the access
mm,
that you have to certain things. But I wouldn't discard it for people. I would
mm.
say that everyone has it, and it's a matter of working in your self, in your subconscious, in your self-awareness, and things like that.
Okay, cool. So we're just going to end with the next question, which is, so I know you have a podcast, and I wanted you to just tell our listeners a little bit about it so they can know where to find you. And, if they're interested in these kind of topics that we've been talking about today, where they can find out more and listen to your lovely voice more.
Mm. Yes, I do have a podcast. It's called The Blossom Experiment. I started it in August of 2019. And I named it The Blossom Experiment because I feel like we humans are in this experiment that we're continuously blossoming ourselves. So we are like continuously evolving and being reborn and dying, and then reborn in again and being born again. So it's like this continuous yeah, journey of experimenting with life. And I started, honestly, it's really interesting to see. It's really interesting when you start posting stuff online, because you see your evolvement. Like, we all evolve, but when you post it online,
Mm,
you have this actual physical symbolism of your evolvement. And in the beginning, I used to talk, well, I've always talked a lot about personal development, self-awareness, spirituality, things like that. The beginning, I talked a lot about my journey with my eating disorders, and my journey with self-love and things like that, and body love, and
mm,
body, yeah, self confidence and things like that. And then it started evolving a lot more into intuition, and then the focus of it basically became intuition and intuitive living and intuitive traveling, and how I live through my intuition and through soul, which for me is the same thing. And yeah, I paused it, and now it's been paused for a while because I still am trying to, well, I would say that I'm more listening to my intuition to understand how to move forward with it and what type of content it wants me to put out, because for a long time it was a beautiful platform for me to process so many things. So you can hear, honestly, I always say that to people, like if someone wants to know every single detail of my life, they could just binge my podcast and they would know about people that I've dated, how was my travels, when did I cry, what was the thing that happened to me while I was living in Lisbon, while I was living in Lagos, and things like that. So you could honestly, like, people could know every single detail about my life. They just don't want to. Like if I'm dating a guy now, if he wants to know all of the other guys that I've dated and things about my past relationships, he could just listen to everything and he would know. But yeah, people are not that smart, you know.
Like I've
But
literally
yeah.
written you like a research project on myself. Evidence, receipts, everything you need. Like
It's here, okay? You want to date me? Then please binge 64, I don't know how many episodes I have there on there now, but yeah, it's very 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 interesting. If you're interested in intuition, like there are episodes in which I talk about how to know if you're making a decision from your intuition or from your ego, how to connect your intuition, how to travel through your intuition. So I have a lot of tips on connecting to your intuition, basically, like especially the most recent ones. So if you're interested in intuition and soul and spirituality, then I would definitely go on there and yeah, tune in. Let me
yeah, that
know.
sounds great. And I will definitely tag you and the podcast in when this actually goes live, which God knows when it will be, because I've realized that editing podcasts takes a long time.
It does.
But yes, when it goes live, I will tag, and hopefully people can come and find you. But yeah, this has been such an interesting conversation, and I know that lots of people will find it fascinating, particularly if they have never sort of delved into this world before. That, I mean, they're either going to find it interesting or completely bizarre, in which
Yeah.
case I apologize, and not all
Or
of these
both.
episodes are going to be relatable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been so good, and honestly, I feel like I can always talk to you about these things, and that's just a great thing to have. It's amazing to have you in my life, and yeah, appreciate you. So
No,
thank you.
I love this. It was very, very, very lovely talking to you. I had missed being on the microphone, so thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for your lovely being. And yeah, I'm so grateful to connect with you and to work together. And yeah, it was very lovely. So thank you so much.